Now, Air Marshal Salim Arshad, President, Royal Aeronautical Society, Pakistan Division, the distinguished guests, Assalamu alaikum. My name is Kashan Jafri. I am the Honorary Secretary of the Royal Aeronautical Society's Pakistan Division. As most of you know, that we used to arrange high-quality monthly lectures, especially for students and young professionals. But due to the current lockdown situation in Pakistan, we have not been able to do so. This is the first time that we are broadcasting our monthly lecture online, and I request your patience if we encounter a technical or network issue during the lecture. The topic of today's lecture is Next Generation Crew Resource Management and Maintenance Resource Management Principles, framework based on aviation psychology, which will be delivered by Captain Naushad Anjum. Captain Naushad Anjum has joined in from the UAE. He's a licensed psychologist and is also certified in human factors, risk assessment, and air crash investigations. He's a member of prominent professional societies, including the International Society of Air Safety Investigators, ISASI, the Royal Aeronautical Society, the Flight Safety Foundation, and the Pakistan Psychological Association, PPA. He's currently an instructor of CRM and flying as a captain on A320 in a Sharjah-based airline. The lecture will be delivered in 2 sessions. Meeting links, IDs, and password for both sessions have already been shared with all of the participants. This is the first session. For the second session, the link and login details have already been shared with you through emails. Now, without further ado, I request Captain Naushad to deliver his lecture. Captain Naushad.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, and thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to speak here. And thank you for this introduction. I would like to add here that whatever we are going to see today or I'm going to speak is not any personal wisdom. I'm not that big a genius at all. And whatever I've learned is from the friends like you. And it's my duty now to just convey whatever we have seen and academically seen and observed in our little flying careers. Let me also add here before I just display the slides that this talk is not restricted only to the crew resource management and MRM framework. It also relates to those people who in any way are related to safety critical industries. Even if they're not industries, every day we drive cars on the roads. We have our domestic safety things as well. So that is important that we hear it not as only a perspective of crew resource management or MRM only, but because it is the introductory framework that I want to introduce as the next generation one. We will maybe in the future come up more specifically to those modules which will be added to this. I've already made those lectures and they're ready with me, and we will have some time to look at them or those lectures as well. So we start with if you could kindly enable my screen sharing, please, Kashan, then I can share my screen with a lecture for you. It's disabled by host with me. All right, I'll just share the screen. Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, can you see the slides now?
Yes, sir, we can see the slides.
If you look at this this screen, you will see a crash site, and this is at least almost 70, 80 years ago, maybe, or maybe even before that. And if you see the next slide, right. Yeah. This is pretty new. I'll show you another slide. This aircraft is again very old, and this is another. What we see common in all these accidents, that they support a very old quotation that there are no new accidents, but just new victims. Because the humans who were involved with interacting these machines, they are still the same. And what is there in our body that really makes us a human is nothing but our mind. We have seen that before this lecture, we might have had many lectures on aviation safety. We might have a lot of knowledge about how our mind works. We would have learned the jargon which is related to aviation, starting from decision making, judgment, complacency, and there is a list of things that are there. But we find out that it's all right, it's one thing to really learn about it in the classroom, But when we go and we do it actually on the flight, we do it on the flight lines, we do it on the road, we do it at home. Even when we say that, oh, we should not be angry with our kids, we should not be angry with other people. We listen to that. But once we actually go in our life, we find out that it's very difficult to really apply them. So what is that which stops us from applying what we already know? On a lighter note, if we open up the book Urdu ki dusri ya tisri kitab, and we open its chapter and scroll through the pages, and then we ask ourselves honestly that these basic lessons that we learned years ago and we have been told time and again, do we really practice them when it comes to apply them? And the answer may not be in a very good positive there. So what is there which stops us from doing what we already know? That means that the future learnings will be based more on unlearning than learning, because I believe that we have so much of information available now that we just keep gathering information, but when the time comes to apply and get the right tool out of it, we lack drastically. It is just like an old wardrobe. If it is full of old clothes, there is no room for new learning. So we need to unlearn. We need to have the courage to first accept that these clothes are no more fashionable. They are not going to be valid. We need to throw them out. We see them everywhere in safety attitudes. We see them everywhere in training attitudes. We see them everywhere in our domestic life, where I will keep relating safety to our normal life because our attitudes are the same human beings. If today a husband expects his wife to behave like his mother used to be when he was a child, it's an unrealistic expectation. So behaviors change with technology. As the technology, people who have never seen television, they were a different species of human beings. If you bring them today, they will be bewildered and shocked at what is happening in the world. So that brings me to another analogy, which I apply the same analogy on training, that can you expect your granddad to plan your marriage? Wow, interesting though. How will you feel about it? So if you can't expect your granddad to plan your marriage ceremony, that how can a training curriculum be designed based on those decades old concepts of behaviors which have not evolved over technology-based new generation? So this generation gap, which was previously spanning over decades, has now spanned over months. How? If you look at Karachi, somebody flies over Karachi on a helicopter or go on a drone camera and find out. If you go over like 60, 50 years ago, you will find out that people would interact in the evening. They will interact a lot with each other. And this interaction brought them into a very important skill set, and that is how to handle criticism right from their childhood. They would interact. Children will interact with other elders. They will get a negative feedback. They will get scolded. There was a lot of development of human development. It explains that why the humans cannot walk, a human child cannot walk for almost a year, while the animals, their offspring, start to walk in months or days, or sometimes in certain species in hours, because humans needed to develop something which is called attachment. This attachment is something which really makes us humans and which helps us develop our prefrontal cortex and our mind, which makes us intelligent humans today. So I'll bring it back to the same technology thing, that we need to unlearn few things. And we'll see now that when we investigate human behavior, there has to be a very detailed knowledge about whom we are really investigating. Today, because I have a clinic also, I'm practicing the last 10 years in Islamabad, that the information that we have as clinicians, as today, even children, even the parents don't know their children very well. So if there is a big gap between parent and child, who live under the same roof, then imagine the kind of gaps that can exist between a captain and a co-pilot today, young people, between a supervisor in engineering to the very young boy who has just joined, between a student and a teacher in the universities, and between all other age-related professions. Now, if you look at this slide, you'll find out that it is going to be a very interesting framework of mind and body or emotions. And these emotions is something which I really want to talk about, that how they interact with each other. Okay. Something which I really want to try to talk about here is coming back to aviation safety, and that is human-machine interface. Remember that machines depend on logic. They work on logic. There was one writer, his name was Rudyard Kipling. Some people from past were really interested in literature. He was given a Nobel Prize in 1907. He lived in British India for a very long time. And he wrote a poem about more than 100 years ago. And the name of the poem was The Secrets of Machine. And in that, the machines, they say something about themselves. It's a long poem, but I'll just share you 2 verses of it. And we say the machine is saying that I can run and race and swim and fly and dive. So this is what a machine is saying. And I can hear and see, and I can read and write. But remember, please, the law by which I live. I am not designed to comprehend a lie. So about 100 years ago, a guy who was from literature understood the logic of machines, that machines do not comprehend a lie. That means they want the procedures to be followed, which are there to operate them. Whether it is from ironing your clothes, it's a simple iron, or it's an aircraft. It is a simple stove in your kitchen, or it's a forklifter. It is a car, or it is some simple machine, or like a mobile phone. If we do not handle machines correctly, they are going to really bite us back. Now, what kind of emotions are there when we say it's a human-machine interface? Now, if I imagine a picture of an airplane, it is all logic. That's like a calculator. 2 + 2, 4, 2 + 2, 4, 2 + 2, 4. If I keep asking this question to a calculator by pressing its buttons, till such time its battery is lost, it will continue to give me the same answer. But if I ask a human being about the same question, 2 + 2, 4, 2 + 2, 4, then after 5 or 6 hours, or maybe earlier than that, that human may give way, because he might have to go to washroom, because he may become hungry, he may start to feel sleepy, he might have other needs. So we humans have needs which we overall call in psychology as emotions. And when our emotions come into play, then since we are an interaction, we are an extension of a machine. When I'm operating an aircraft does not have emotions, but I as a human being have emotions, that means I'm now extension of a machine, but I need to behave in certain way, in a much more stable way, as far as emotions as possible. Because my mind, my brain, where all the training, decision making, wisdom, intellect, judgment, perception, everything is right here in the brain, but it is surrounded by something which is called emotions. And if I'm not aware as a human that what are my limitations of my mind, then no matter how much training I get about I should do this, I should do that, I should do this, I should do that, I think I will do, but if I don't know the limitations of human mind, it will become tragically wrong. We'll go tragically wrong in devising our policies, in devising our own discipline about interacting with machine, in devising our study plans, in devising all kind of future plans if we do not know our own self. About 5 years ago, I was in Shara Faisal Drigg Road visiting a friend, and while we were reversing the car, I think it was 5 or 6 years ago. So I saw a gentleman and I recognized him. He was our hero, Alam. And I went and said salam to him. I was actually on a lecture spree when I was working for an airline in Pakistan. So I just said salam to him and he asked me, what are you doing here in Karachi? He didn't know me. I told him I'm an ex-Air Force guy, but I'm here now working as an aviation psychologist and a pilot. And you know what he told me? He told me something which really shocked me. He said, really, I'm so happy that aviation psychology has evolved. We brought aviation psychologists from US Air Force in 1960s to Pakistan. And I didn't tell him, because I didn't want to disappoint him, that actually it was just by chance that I'm here. And aviation psychology, by the way, those people are gone and it is nowhere to be seen. So I come back to the same now, why it is important, why the West has done so much work on human factor in aviation psychology, because they wanted to really know the human. And know the human does not mean that we just go on simple lectures on attitude, behavior, decision making, judgment, and we are done. Now, I'll just take this opportunity because what I believe is that people who are, the opportunities which I was given in my life, people who are attending this lecture, if they were given the same opportunities, they might have done much better than I have done. So those people who are interested in understanding human behavior and take them as their future profession of human factors, this picture may also throw some light. So on this picture of brain, I will focus on this red part in the front, which is the prefrontal cortex or the frontal lobe. And you see it covers, it deals with planning, organizing, emotional and behavioral control, personality, problem solving, attention, social skills. And you have different parts of the brain. Now in the neural pathways, it only works when there is enough oxygen in the brain. And of course, oxygen is carried there with the help of blood, is a carrier of that. Now, what happens that when people go into stress, whether it is a stress of an emergency situation, whether it is a stress of any problem at home, whether it is a stress of being under evaluation, whether it is a stress by the boss, whether it is a stress of a captain to a co-pilot, any kind of stress, when it comes to our mind, we immediately go back to our Stone Age to our Stone Age response to stress, and that is that adrenaline is pumped, heart rate is increased, the blood starts to flow tremendously towards arms and legs, and this compromises the blood flow in other parts of our body, and brain is one of them where we need it the most. So it's not the dinosaur anymore where we did not need the brain, but we needed muscles to fight or flight. But now we don't want to enter into a fight-flight response handling an emergency. Rather, we need some blood in that brain so that our cognitive thinking and our all learning, which is housed in the prefrontal cortex, is not blocked because of blood shortage. And that is another definition of emotional intelligence, that it makes us so mindfully so strong. It gives us that mental toughness that makes us aware all the time, or in times of crisis, or in times of stress. With this background, we move on now, that if the brain has these kind of limitations, then what are those things which really put us into stress? So this slide tells us that what all are those things which puts people into stress. This may be important for you to understand that what is your major area of stress that you need to look after. You might have noticed that while you're driving your car, or you're doing a pre-flight inspection on the aircraft, or you are doing your engineering work, or even you are just walking somewhere, your mind starts to go haywire. You're offering your prayers and you find your mind is mind wandering. What is mind wandering? Mind wandering in another way is an indicator that you are not staying or living in the present. You're either in the future or you're in the past. And this lack of attention has been one of the major causes of those accidents which were related to memory lapses. Similarly, there are other stressors. On this picture, you will find out that starting from the bottom, physiological needs. If a person does not have enough temperature where he's sitting, people do not have enough nourishment, they have not slept well, then then this is the lowest part of the stressor that people can get if you're hungry or your physiological needs. The second need is your safety. If there is a life-threatening situation which happens in an aircraft emergency situation, then also it is going to affect and put us into stress, which will of course can lead us to cognitive blocking if you're not trained for that. And the third one is called love and belonging. Now, a lot of stressors are related to the top three ones, which are related to emotional needs, that is love and belonging, family, children, self-esteem. and self-actualization. Now, every person needs to know that in their own life, what is something which literally carries them away when it comes to their work conditions. For example, a pilot whose child is sick. For example, a pilot who has some problem with his management. For example, a pilot who has got some issues, who is entering into a flying area where there's a lot of weather. So these all stressors come into play. And now once we work in the foreign airlines, we find out that the simulators are not there to give a hands-on practice only. The simulators are there to give us an exposure to stress and give us the techniques to cool down and slow down. So the crew resource management makes a person, I say again, it makes and prepares a person who becomes more sensitive towards his own susceptibility to the stresses, types of stresses that can make him stressed. But more importantly, I repeat, more importantly, crew resource management of 5th generation will enable people to understand that what in them can affect their team members, that their team members can go into stress. That means if I am a person who has an awareness about human factor of 5th generation CRM or MRM, I will develop skill sets about my own self, that what is there in my personality. It can be my body language. It can be my choice of words. It can be how I interact with other people. It can be how I handle emotions. It can be how I handle conflict. How I handle conflict, which can put other person, my team member, who is vital for my safety, into that kind of a stress, which will make him an unsafe person, and that person will no longer be a useful team member. It also applies to our homes, that what is our awareness about our own self as a father, as a husband, as a son, that we actually repel other people from us because there is something which is not right in us in our social setting. All right, so this is an interesting slide. We see what we want. Now, in the crew resource management or CRM or major accidents that happened, there are people who will say that they were absolutely sure where they were going. And now we are entering into next area of our human limitation, and that is biases. That what kind of biases our minds can have. And these biases. Now, before I go on these biases, I will just conclude my previous talk on one subject and ask the participants to think about this. That you have a checklist and you have a -1, or you have your manual where you have limitations of your machines. Now, this 5th generation CRM is going to be your own checklist. Just like fingerprints are different for every person, that we all have different levels of stressors and stress handling different from other person. So look at it with this perspective, that how you will be finding your own limiting factors, that what switches your fuse off, for example, when it comes to emotional arousal. And now see in the same perspective that what kind of biases are there, and before we really jump, we should see, am I being a victim of a bias? I'll give you a very interesting Florida experiment, and then we will have a break, and then we'll come back for our concluding session, couple of other slides, and then we will call it a day for after having your question answer sessions. So now, what is the bias I'm going to talk about here? This next slide is that this is called the Florida effect. And this is something which probably was one of the most classical experiments done. So it was done in one of the universities in the US, where there were 2 groups of students made, and those groups of students were put into 2 different waiting rooms, and they were told that please wait in these rooms, and we will be giving you a test which you guys have to take. So while they were waiting, one group, which was actually the controlled group, that group was told that while you wait, can you please make sentences while you are sitting free? So they said, all right. So they were given 5 words, and out of those 5 words, they were to make sentences. The only condition was that in each sentence, 4 out of those 5 words should be there. So what are those 5 words They were bald, without hair. Wrinkled, that is wrinkled, the skin. Gray, the gray, yeah. Wise, and the fifth one was Florida. Now, they were given these words and they were told that while you will make 5 sentences, 4 of these words must be there and Florida has to be there as well. So now these kids, they took a lot of minutes and made some sentences. It kept on for a while and then the paper were taken from them. The other group in the other waiting room, who were the same age group students, because of the research methods, the groups were almost same. They were carefully selected. The other group was not given any of such tasks. And then both these groups were told to go to the main hall and appear in the test. While they were going in the hall, there were speed cameras, laser cameras, which were installed, and they were measuring their speed of walking. It was shockingly and surprisingly observed that the group which made those sentences, their average speed of going to the hall was much more slower than that group which was not given any task. While it might have a lot of explanations, but yes, one of the major continuation of experiments like this proved that the group which was young people, they were made to make sentences which are related to the words which are related to old age. Bald, wrinkled, wise, gray, Florida, all of them are related to old age. So while they were making them, it programmed their mind in such a way that not only they thought about it, they actually behaved like old people and walked slowly. Now, this is an amazing explanation that why people come out of the cinema and for many hours they start to walk like a hero, or they want to use the similar sentences which have inspired them. These biases we carry all our life. When I fly with a captain as a first officer who is not following the book, who is trying to talk about breaking the rules, who is trying to tell me about ill-disciplined things, he is trying to make something which is not right and talk about it, whether it's an engineer, whether it's a teacher, something which is not according to the norms. We can easily say that it doesn't affect me, I'm a human being, I know what is right and I know what is wrong. No, sir. We are affected by everything we see. We are affected by everything we do. And now that brings me in the last 1 minute to that social media thing that we browse whole day. Whatever we see, it affects us. Whatever we hear, it goes into our subconscious mind and it takes us to that level of anxiety and depression that will only be proved to us if at all somebody has the courage to do a research tomorrow on us. And then we will see that what kind of blindness are we having about ourselves. So this is called blind to our blindness. We are becoming more and more invulnerable. And I'll just give an example here of the cause of this ill-fated aircraft. I don't want to get into any investigative thing, but I'm just talking about one point, misconception, that the call of the first officer were very cool. When I asked few psychologists actually in a forum that why their calls are cool, and all of them said, because this is what we have been told in human factor, and I really am very sad about it, that they said it's probably invulnerability. It is not invulnerability. It is denial. Why? Because when you hear a bad news, you always say, subconscious tells you, oh no. Oh no is the word of subconscious. And these are called ego self-defense mechanisms. And when you say that you're about to die, your all ego defense mechanisms will come out. Some people will start to sing. Some people will start to do just trying to relax themselves and deny that apparent danger is coming. It is a defense mechanism. It's not right or wrong. Everybody will have it different. Okay, thank you very much. It's good to continue. Now, we were here that we have some certain amount of biases. Now, if you just have a bird's eye view about this talk which I'm doing, you will see that I'm focusing more and more about the human. I'm focusing about more and more our own self and our own limitations that we can be very, very much blinded to. I will now talk about another bias, and then we will move on to attitude, and then we'll finish it today. The other bias which I'm going to talk about is that we have a lot of what we call it suspicion to novelty. Now I'll explain what is suspicion to novelty. Suspicion to novelty is a bias of a mind where whenever we see a new thing, whenever we see a new idea, whenever we see something new, we try to look at it with skepticism. We like to look at it whenever we see a new person in an organization, whenever we see a new person in a group, we start to look at that person with suspicion. That's a very basic human bias. You will find that a lot in animals, like a sparrow. When a sparrow is eating something from a wall, she will just pick up two of those grains, and then she will look 180 degrees left, right, here, there, 90 degrees. Again, she'll go down. That is kind of a susceptibility or the suspicion to novelty, that she's a new place. It is our evolutionary process that we are susceptible to novelty. But how does it really relate to aviation safety is something interesting. On a lighter note, when a woman is married and she goes to a new house, both the parties, the bride and the person and the house where they have gone, they all go through suspicion to novelty mechanism throughout, and they are not aware that they're going through this. And those hostilities, which are naturally human mind, are taken on a personal note, and things can really go destroyed. And that's why probably people need to take some trainings on suspicion to novelty and be aware about it, and may be able to address this issue later on. Coming back to this now, the suspicion to novelty experiment was again done, in which in a university, there were some words which were published in the daily newsletter. Those words were in Turkish language, and there were very few Turkish students in that university. Majority was other languages. People called registrar office and asked that, why are you publishing words on the main page which we don't understand? And they said, the registrar office replied that the advertiser does not want to disclose the reason of the advertisement. You will come to know very soon. In 3 months' time, the students of the university were gathered in a hall, and they were given the test or asked the question that you were seeing some words coming last 3 months publishing in the newsletter. We would like you to please, we will flash those words on the screen in front of you. There are few of them only, which were rotating every day. So please tell us which of these words you think means friendliness, and which of these words means hostility. Friendliness and hostility. And you will be shocked to know, as we all as psychologists were, that despite the fact that they did not know the language, still majority of the people chose one word which meant friendliness. And why? What really dictated them to choose it? Actually, that was one word which was published the most in those 90 days. So people were getting used to of seeing this word time and again, and they developed that the association, the friendliness, which they saw every day. Like if you see somebody daily and say hello, hi, you see a message every day from somebody, or your boss or somebody or your juniors, you develop the suspicion to novelty goes away, and there is more friendliness which starts to come in. It was another story, however, that actually that word actually meant hostile. But since it was appearing so much and they did not know the meaning, and that's why they called it friendliness. So same way in aviation safety, a lot of the problems that people face when it comes to training, when it comes to simulated trainings, when it comes to training and exams, when it comes to teaching in a class, when it comes to relationships, people are getting affected by what the previous knowledge they have about that person and what kind of suspicion to novelty they really affect or they really take. And that is what affects their training and their training quality. A lot of instructors become affected by this bias, and it really destroys the quality of training that is imparted to the new students, that we become victim of this bias also, where we are not comfortable with other people and we can really take it to other limits. Now, we come to the next one. We come to the first one today now, and that is areas of next generation CRM, that how we handle attitude and judgment. As I said earlier, that emotions is something which are not required when it comes to interacting with machines. When I say emotions, it does not mean we are humans, we have emotions. But when I say emotions, what does that mean? Now, let me explain. If I have a medical checkup every year, Some people who are of certain age, they might have after 2 years. This medical checkup of 1 year or 6 months, we assume as doctors, for example, that your blood pressure, your glucose level, and your all other things will take about 6 months to deteriorate to a dangerous level. And that is why this 6 months time is given to you. Now the question comes, what about our mental health? Do you think that our mental health will also take 6 months or a year? Now, how? When I'm angry, for example, when I'm emotional, when I'm disturbed by a traffic controller, when I'm disturbed by my captain, when I'm disturbed by my first officer, when I'm disturbed by my crew, anybody, a driver who has come to pick me up, when I'm disturbed by my instructor, when I'm disturbed by a student, when I'm disturbed by another motorist on the road, I think somebody is probably, okay. So when I'm disturbed by these emotions, by these emotional arousal around us, do you think that at that very moment, if somebody does my psychometric test, will I be fit for my job? No, it may not be, because that is the time when I'm not, when my license, actually I say it like this, that my license is no more valid. I'm not qualified to sit in that machine and handle it. That is one of the reasons that we really want to focus on mental health, not so to say that mental health, God forbid somebody's got like German wings, acute depression, but that when something goes wrong, how do we handle it? How do we remain calm? How do we take a deep breath? How do we become a different person? Whenever I talk about CRM, I start with one thing which I deliberately didn't do, because that is something which is probably to be remembered, and I want to bring it to the end now. That CRM or MRM or any behavior training, it is, I've heard a lot of psychologists, a lot of trainers that it is a personality training. We have to become a person that in our outside life, in our cockpit life, in our engineering life, in our other professional life, that's an ideal situation. I pray that we become like that. But what I want to say here today, that no matter what kind of person you are, no matter what kind of person you are at home, our basic minimum requirement is that once you come to that aircraft, when you come for your job, that just like your emergency procedures, just like your dress that you wear, your uniform is vital, just like your documents are vital, same way, your emotional arousal, your emotional stability, or this training, this is not a training of any other thing, but it's a training of skill set. CRM is a skill set. I say again, CRM is a skill set. It has to be learned. If you may be an angry young man outside, please, once you enter this sterilized environment, then throw away whatever you are carrying in your own personality, and you have to do this skill set. And that is why, unfortunately, a lot of our pilots and a lot of our people fail in foreign airlines, because they take their baggage with them, because they want to tell that how good they are and how probably self-righteous they could be. So what is attitude and how is it different from behavior? So here, I want to say something that apparently, a behavior of a person is indicator of his attitude. Attitude is mindset. If we had more time, we could have made this class more interactive and ask questions, but I think that can put us into some problem, because then people may forget their mics on. So that's why I'll just continue it this way. Maybe in the next lecture, we will plan it for having a more interactive session, or I'll keep it for question answer sessions if you have any questions. So attitude is a mindset, but behavior is how you act on that mindset. But here we can go wrong. Your behavior may not be a depiction of your attitude. I say again, our behavior may not be a depiction of our attitude. For example, a person who hates cigarette is its attitude, it's its mindset. He hates cigarette. But if somebody is observing this person from outside while he's sitting in a room, then the same person who hates cigarette, his behavior towards his younger brother or with his friends will be different, but his behavior with his boss, who is trying to light a cigarette will be different. So behavior depends on other factors. They may be visible, they may be invisible, and that is where there exists a gap between training, mindset, and how we actually apply that training. These are those invisible pressures. Same is the relationship between judgment, which is called pilot judgment or engineer judgment or roadside or a driver's judgment. How is it different than decision making? So a lot of pilots, they, in their own judgment, if you ask them, what do you think? They may something different. But when the time comes to do it, they may do it in a totally different way. We have seen many embarrassing accidents in different organizations where a very senior person was sitting in the cockpit just as an observer or just as a passenger. And very presence of that person actually created an invisible pressure on those flight crew, and they made some very wrong decisions. Some of them landed in wrong runways also. So how our mind is sensitive to these decision-making processes is another area of crew resource management and MRM. And when we do this course and training of next generation CRM, MRM, which is about 10 modules that I normally conduct, and each module takes about 2 hours or 1 hour, we will very interestingly go to this conclusion that our attitudes and our judgments are something that we need to be aware of, because our biases start to work on our attitudes. Our biases start to work on our judgment. As a person in a safety critical industry, I will be talking about something else here about attitude and judgment, and that is personality. I'll talk about the personality tests here, and because of this crash also which happened. Now, when we talk about personality tests, and once they were devised by aviation psychologists in FAA, the major area was not to measure the organic mental disorders, which could be depression or schizophrenia or bipolar disorder or paranoia, because they are serious organic mental disorders, and of course they can become very visible. And it's one area of aviation psychology, and of course it's more related to the MBBS doctors and psychiatrists. What they really meant from psychometric tests was totally different. That was that how does this person handles conflict? How does this person handles criticism? So, my dear ladies and gentlemen, how do we handle criticism is something which will be a take home today, because criticism is something, or the fear of criticism is something that really puts people into emotional arousal, and this emotional arousal can start a chain of event that can put us into unsafe. So how do we handle criticism? We have some time now, so I'll just talk about criticism in like 5 to 7 minutes, and then we will invite the questions. Now, criticism is something, according to Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs slides, which I show you, where we see self-actualization as top. How humans develop handling criticism. Remember, when a child is born 100% egoistic. A child has 100% ego. What is ego? Ego is a reality principle. So there are 3 things. I'll very quickly go through them, because I know most of you are students also. It's going to help you in your future trainings also. So one is called id. Id is a player principle thing, that there is a child, you see something red, something bright, he holds it. It is player principles, immediate gratification. Then comes ego. After it comes ego. Ego is reality principle. Reality principle is that I tell my child, no, it does not belong to you. This cup belongs to your brother. Now, reality is that I am the reality check, and I'm telling that this is not yours. That is called ego. It is called reality principle. The third one is called superego, and that is called morality principle. What is that? It means that while I'm there, the child is not touching the cup or that thing because it thinks the reality is here. But when I go out, the reality is gone. It will again prevail and try to hold the cup. So that's why we train children on superego, on morality, that even if the reality is gone, still this cup does not belong to you. And that is why people, when they do something wrong, they go into something which is called guilt, because guilt is an antidote to morality principle or super ego. So why I was coming to this, that how we handle criticism is that once as a child, we keep on telling a child in his life, 3 years, 4 years of age, don't do this, don't do that. Don't do this, don't do that. I'm not against disciplining the child, but I think that we should discipline children while maintaining their respect by not hurting their ego, because they have been designed to fiddle and finger everything. They don't have any ownership. If they don't hold things and don't check them, they cannot develop sense of hot and cold, soft and hard, you know. So if you discipline them, now what happens? If as children we are not, our egos are not kept, or we are not respected as children, so to say, so we develop a lot of sensitivity to criticism. We tend to think that being wrong is absolutely no-no. Absolutely no-no. And in order to defend this, then people resort to telling a lie. People resort to go to externalization of their failures, that the exam was very tough, or that mere sa zyadati huya, that somebody was not fair to me. So we need all the other reason except our own reason. That's called sensitivity to criticism. There was one child which was brought to my clinic in Islamabad. His father was in Pakistan Navy. He was a captain, and he said that my child is not going to school. He says that the children, they bully me. The child, mind you, the child is only in grade 3 or grade 4. I can't recall. They recently returned from Australia after a foreign assignment. So I asked the child that, beta, what is the problem? What kind of bullying you get? So the child said to his father also and to me also, कि लोग मुझे कहते हैं कि you are an idiot. Idiot? Okay. So I asked his father that since how long was it happening to him? He said about 2 months, 3 months. So I said, how did you counsel your son? He said, I told my son that being an idiot, if somebody tells you an idiot, it will not make you an idiot. They are just telling you an idiot. And this is where I want to intervene and tell all of you, ladies and gentlemen, that this is a wrong approach. Why? Why it is wrong to be called an idiot? Is it an impossibility in our life? Are we not made idiots by our friends? Are we not made idiots by our family members? Do we not make idiot out of our own self? So this denial or avoidance that we cannot be wrong because others are wrong in perceiving that we are wrong, this denial creates a personality in us which restricts any kind of negative feedback. And that negative feedback hinders our learning, it hinders our progress, it hinders our personality development, and it hinders our promotions also. Because people start to know that you cannot give a negative feedback to this person because he is not trained how to handle criticism. So once to go back today, please ask your loved ones that what are the things that literally want to change in you, and you will find some very interesting answers, especially as youngsters. Because we think, as I said earlier, we are blind to our blindness. But people literally know that what we are and where do we stand. They say in Urdu ka ek sher hai, jaane na jaane, gul hi na jaane, baag to sara jaane hai. So everybody knows what we are. It's only we who are blind to that. So our schooling system, adding to that, it created now a workforce of students who are going into a false sense of comfort. If you attend a parent-teacher meeting, sab achhe ki report hai. Everybody gets the same briefing. So the children, bechare, they get into this, okay, all right, we all are very good. When they enter into university, they get a reality check. Okay, no, God, I was being told in my school I was the best. And then, since they cannot handle that criticism, or even if they get into jobs, kisi ne unko kuch keh diya, then they resort to addiction. They resort to suicides. They resort to cutting their limbs. And if they are people who are more accomplished in their life and now they are given criticism, they really fail to handle it. I'll just give you last example of my own, and then we will finish it. This will take a minute. I was doing my initial conversion of Airbus 320 in Jordan, 2012, and I was back to flying in after 6 years. So my instructor, he told me that Naushad, you are too slow. you're unable to do it. I think I have seen it, but you're unable to do it. Well, I being a fighter pilot, it was a shock for me that why I cannot fly this machine while I was doing much better. I was a flight instructor in Pakistan Airforce on fighters for 3 years. I was a flight instructor on fighters in the UAE Airforce for 3.5 years flying Hawks. So I thought I was pretty good. So when I went back, interestingly, by that time, I had a psychology background for the last about 5 years. So I did a self-check. What is going wrong? Two things. One, I was not prepared for that kind of a demand. In my mind, I thought it's going to be too easy, piece of cake. That was one thing. Secondly, in my own self, I felt I was so accomplished that the fear of an instructor's criticism with my buddy, who was on my right seat, and incidentally, he was my student from Air Force, this fear of failure of criticism from my instructor was really taking my major mental resource, and I was unable to focus. And then I said, thank you very much. Here you go. To strip off your fears. It's not the fear of failure, ladies and gentlemen, which keeps us from failing. It's not the failure, it's the fear of failure. I'm sorry. It's the fear of failure which makes us fail. It's the fear of being wrong. Yes, we should be morally, we should be ethically right, but it's all right to fail in our life. Because I'm sitting here with you, I have seen a lot of failures in my life, and I think we all need to learn from that. So that is the basic framework for crew resource management, MRM. It may be surprising for you that how I'm approaching this subject, but that is how it's going to be, because it has to be related to our actual mindset, and we have to go and work in the roots of it. Thank you very much. I'm open to questions.
Thank you very much for the wonderful lecture, sir. I hope everyone enjoyed the lecture. Now we are able to take questions. If you have any question, you can either write in the chat box or you can unmute yourself and ask a question. Muhammad Savi, he's from Serene Engineering Services, Quality Department. He has a comment that he says, rightly said, dealing with criticism is one of the biggest challenge which many fail to do.
We have some more questions, I think, on top. I can see there are about 16 of them. So I will start. Okay. So is it a question or what? Okay, so it's another question by Mr. Saqib, that could you please tell us about disadvantages of CRM? So what if we go to that question? If there is another question above that, please let me just check. Questions, can we say that CRM is concerned with training and performance? That's is, okay, why not self-analysis? Yeah, blind to a blind. Okay, so this is the question, that what are the disadvantage CRM? Interesting question. I think the question is coming from somebody who has a background on CRM, or I'm not sure, so that I could be more focused on giving this answer, because Mr. Muhammad Saqib, can I know the background so that I can be more focused about this answer? Because CRM might have many disadvantages if it is not applied correctly. So Mr. Saqib is, Mr. Saqib, can you please tell us your background, which is from flying or engineering, or what is your work area, so that I can be more specific about this? Okay, while they type it, I was working in PI and CRM team. Thank you very much. Okay. When we talk about the next generation CRM, I think CRM had two major disadvantages which people have. And when we say disadvantages, we have to know that these disadvantages are proved by an empirical evidence or an academic method, or these disadvantages are the opinions of people who have been exposed to CRM probably an incorrect way, or an inappropriate or inconsistent culture where it was. For example, when CRM was first introduced, it was taken as a challenge to the authority of captains. I know, because many old captains who thought that it is a challenge. Let me also share here that I'm working for now Air Arabia, and Air Arabia is an academy of the pilots. So the young pilots are sitting on our right seat are very, very young. And I think now I can understand where Mr. Saqib is very rightly hinting is that sometimes CRM is being used by especially the young generation as an excuse to not knowing their procedures and books well, and they keep on looking for the faults on part of the captain, and it becomes an excuse for not doing their own work, and they try to use it as a tool of assertiveness. So for those of you who are young and pilots, let me tell you that while captains also, I tell them that they should be focusing on their primary work, and they should only give a negative feedback to a co-pilot after the flight unless it's a very serious safety critical issue right over there. They should wait for it, because if they will keep on looking at their first officer and keep worried about his impression, then they will maybe able to forget their primary duties. More importantly, I have seen some first officers that because of their maybe a lot of connections with the management, or whatever political reasons, or whatever educational reason, or whatever internal politics sometimes in airlines, these first officers, they try to become over assertive with the captains. They tend to kind of overwhelm the captain in the name of CRM. Like there is a small thing, they will immediately go in a call out. There's a small thing, they keep on bothering it. And now there comes a tension in the cockpit, and that tension can literally become too much of, it's going to be even more negative than what is required out of it. So one of the major solutions to that has been, and that we have seen, is a proper documentation about CRM. The CRM document has to be very clearly spelled out that what are those areas, what are those positions where our first officer has to speak up, and what are those lines which need to be defined, because there are some things which cannot be just kept on bombarded to the captains or to each other, and the aircraft is going by its own self. So CRM cannot be used as a tool either to over control your first officer or to over control your captain. And CRM also cannot be used as a tool to undermine your team members, because sometimes the cabin team, they also can misuse CRM and vice versa by using it as a tool that can literally hurt other people's feeling, just killing the spirit of it. I hope I answer your question, Mr. Saqib.
So we have a question. We have a question from Samra Azhar. The question is, if a child has passed the phase of reality ego and is functioning inappropriately, how to train them?
Thank you very much, Ms. Samra. Nice to see you, my ex-colleague in Airblue. Samra, I think you're absolutely hit it on the nail that now we are all grown-up children. And it may be too late now to really correct them. Why I was giving this explanation was that awareness, when people's personality, it depends on three major things. One is their genes, second is their childhood development, and third is social learning. Fortunately, Kudrat or nature has a beautiful design that it could not give us, it could not put us into a band gali or a close ki ab kuch nahi ho sakta. No. Social learning is the most powerful learning tool. You're done with your genes, you're done with your childhood development. But for example, there is a man, he comes from somewhere, a village in Pakistan, and he has never seen how line is made, how a queue is made, nothing. When he lands in Dubai airport, there is no shurta standing in the lounge. Nobody standing in the lounge. But he sees that everybody is going to stand in the line. He will also go and join the line. Social learning, agar people are interested, Zedong was the psychologist who has done a lot of work in culture and social learning. That is why we say on culture of an organization. If you go to, for example, an Airbus assembly line, it will be so clean that you will feel that, oh my God, should I throw something here? But if there is already litter in some organization, then no, but people will not feel anything. So coming back to your question, that if a person has been inappropriately brought up, the amount of social learning or the social training or the training quality of that organization, it can literally help this person to grow, especially if their supervisor are trained in human factor, especially if the training is given as per the CAROPS to the management about human factor and aviation psychology, and especially the next generation human factor, that how people can be tamed, how they can be disciplined, A, by training, secondly, by accountability. Because we see that happening in these foreign airlines. People come from all types of backgrounds, all type of disciplinary issues. But when they land here, A, they select them carefully, B, they train them very well, three, there is a very strict accountability system which throws away people. And when people see that this person is being thrown away because he's not improved despite all things, people will start to improve. Okay, we have a question also here, which is coming from, there is an article from Harvard Business, Finding Coaching in Criticism. That article changed my whole viewpoint on accepting criticism. Nicely, I think it's a good share. It's not a question. So any other questions? Okay, there's a question by Mr. Amin Mustafa with regards to the experience. Does age induce experience or a negligent attitude? Excellent question, I must say. Now, what happens with age is that age is an interesting thing. I always say that the best CRM team will be a very old pilot or the captain, for example, and a very young first officer. Why? What happens that experience has to be joined with books. When we become too experienced, a lot of blinding starts to take shape. For those of you who have been flight instructors, I'll give you this example with that reference and also other examples. That if you are used to of finding switches in an aircraft, with those switches which you don't touch every day, yeah. So you fly every day, and those switches you don't touch. There are only few switches which we normally use, and rest are not touched. If you bring in a new guy who has just joined this aircraft and he opened his checklist and he's new to the system, if you put an experienced guy over there and a new guy there, the experienced guy will or may miss out those inappropriate, incorrect switchology, but a new guy will not, because a new guy is not blinded by experience. So in a way, I agree that experience has that blinding effect. And that is why in normal flights that we do, whenever we make a decision, even to avoid weather, even to pick up how much fuel, even to do any decision on the flight deck, it is done with the concurrence of my first officer or my co-pilot. And it is not that kind of concurrence that this is what I think, what do you think? No, we say, okay, this is how it is, what is your opinion? So that he is not affected by my preconceived decision and try to match it. No, it's an independent decision, and then we do it, because we see that experience can have a blinding effect. I hope that answers your question. Okay, so we have...
I have the question.
Yes, please.
So you discussed about the emotion of guilt, and due to that, we sometimes externalize our guilt, which results in sensitivity to criticism, as you said. But sometimes the guilt at least indicates that at least we know that we did something wrong. But that is not often the case because of what we call cognitive dissonance. That sometimes when presented with evidence that we did something wrong, we use that evidence itself to justify our own preconceived beliefs. And in fact, we don't even realize, or that guilt doesn't come. Do you agree with that assertion? And research also indicates that cognitive dissonance is more in those professions where it is difficult, where there is a professional body and a skill set, specific skill set required in profession. So it is difficult to get into those professions or master those profession, or there is a very complicated initiation rites that one has to go through to get into that profession. So cognitive dissonance has been found to be more in such professions.
The thing is that cognitive dissonance, you know, when we talk about the guilt and induction of guilt, it means that you have done something wrong. Of course, it is something which is also energy, and that energy is supposed to be used to, and you know, these programs like CHIRP, which is called confidential human information reporting programs, or the confidential or the ASRs, air safety reports, which are done with confidentiality. A lot of development in aviation safety has happened not because of the accidents, but people had made mistakes. They had that guilt in them. They had that understanding in them. They had that awareness in them. And that awareness is the major research asset for the people who develop the safety defenses or safety barriers or safety nets for the future trainings, and who also develop the human factor related procedure designings, you know. So that is why it is not something which is negative in a way. It is very positive, but provided how you handle it. I'll give you example here. We are flying in different airspaces, and this air traffic controller asks, for example, he says Pakistan or Airblue or who is maintaining flight level 340 or 34,000. He says, confirm, can you climb flight level 360? Now this guy knows that probably there is turbulence at 36,000 or whatever reason. Now this guy can actually climb 360, but he gives a call, which is very normal. I've seen it, that he says unable 360 due to weight, for example. Now, this is not correct. This is not weight. It is that he does not want to go there. Now, when we fly in these airlines, we find an interesting amount of honesty that the controller asks that, for example, any foreign airline, he asks him, I'm not saying everybody is doing it, I'm just giving an example of culture. He says, confirm able 360. For example, he asks another Via or any other airline, and he says, able 360, I'm able 360, but not willing, or I'm happy at 340 due to this reason. Game over. So imagine that both have approached the same thing. This one small sentence of honesty that is a part of this profession. And I fully agree with this, that this honesty has to be an integral part of interacting with machines.
Okay, I think we don't have much time left. That was a very informative session, and thank you for your questions and inputs as well. I believe if there are around 70 participants, I believe there might be a few more questions, but you can email the questions to the Royal Aeronautical Society, the email ID. I'll have them answered by Captain Naushad. And I thank Captain Naushad once again for offering more sessions of such sort.
And yes, thank you very much for having me. I'll in the end just say one thing, that we all are here to work for aviation safety. It's a very good initiative done by Royal Aeronautical Society. Special thanks to the management that they gave me this chance. I will also request that if you want to know more, you can talk to Kashan. My name is Naushad Anjum. What I've done recently, that I've started uploading videos, training videos on my YouTube channel. My YouTube channel is Naushad Anjum. You will find interesting videos on safety, human factors, CRM, and other psychological issues. We need to work towards the betterment. And about this crash, in the end, I would like to say that please do not make any judgments till such time the investigation is out. However, if there are people out of you who are really interested to know more about human factor and aviation psychology, please feel free and discover it. A lot of opportunities exist there. Thank you very much.
Thank you everyone for joining in. I'm going to end the meeting now. We hope to keep such lectures in the near future soon, inshallah. Allah Hafiz.